Chapter 14. At first, the others thought that Edward was a great good joke. "A rabbit," the hobo said, laughing. "Let's chop him up and put him in the stew pot." Or when Bull sat with Edward carefully balanced on a knee, one of them would call out, "Got yourself a little dolly, Bull?" Edward, of course, felt a surge of anger at being referred to as a dolly. But Bull never got angry. He simply sat with Edward on his knee and said nothing. Soon the men became accustomed to Edward, and word of his existence spread. So it was then that Bull and Lucy stepped up to a campfire in another town, another state, another place entirely. The men knew Edward and were glad to see him. "Malone!" they shouted in unison, his new name. And Edward felt a rush of pleasure at being recognized and being known. Whatever it was that had begun in Nellie's kitchen, Edward's new and strange ability to sit very still and concentrate the whole of his being on the stories of another became invaluable around the hobo campfire. "Look at Malone," said the man named Jack one evening. "He's listening to every word." "Certainly," said Bull. "Of course he is." Later that night, Jack came and sat next to Bull and asked if he could borrow the rabbit. Bull handed Edward over, and Jack sat with Edward on his knee and whispered into his ear. "Helen," said Jack, "and Jack Jr. and Taffy, she's the baby. Those are my kids' names. They're all in North Carolina. You ever been to North Carolina? It's a beautiful state. That's where they are. Helen, Jack Jr., and Taffy. You remember their names, okay, Malone?" After this, wherever Bull and Lucy and Edward went, some hobo would take Edward aside and whisper the names of his children in Edward's ear. Ted, Nancy, William, Jenny, Eileen, Skipper, Faith. Edward knew what it was like to say over and over again the names of the ones that you had left behind. He knew what it was like to miss someone, and so he listened, and in his listening, his heart opened wide and wider still. The rabbit stayed lost with Lucy and Bull for a long time. Almost 7 years passed, and in that time, Edward became an excellent hobo. Happy to be on the road, restless when he was not. The sound of the wheels on the train tracks became a music that soothed him. He could have ridden the rails forever, but one night in a railroad yard in Memphis, Tennessee, as Bull and Lucy slept in an empty freight car, Edward kept watch, and trouble arrived. A man entered the freight car and shone a flashlight in Bull's face and then kicked him away. "You bum," he said. "You dirty bum. I'm sick of you guys sleeping everywhere. This ain't no motel." Bull sat up slowly. Lucy started to blink and to bark. "Shut up," said the man. He delivered a swift kick to Lucy's side that made her yelp in pain. All his life, Edward had known what he was. A rabbit made out of china, a rabbit with bendable arms and legs and ears. He was bendable, though, only if he was in the hands of another. He could not move himself. He had never regretted this more deeply than that night as he watched Bull and Lucy be abused in that car. Edward wanted to be able to defend Lucy, but he could do nothing. He could only sit there and wait. Said something," said the man to Bull. Bull put his hands up in the air and said, "We are lost." "Lost? Ha! You bet you're lost." And then he said, the man shined his light and said, "What's this?" as he shined the light on Edward. "That's Malone," said Bull. "What the heck?" said the man. He poked at Edward with the toe of his boot. "Things are out of control. Things are out of hand. Not on my watch, no sir, not when I'm in charge." The train suddenly lurched into motion. "No sir," said the man again. "No free ride for rabbits," he said. He turned, opened the door of the rail car, and with one swift kick, he kicked Edward out into the darkness. The rabbit flew through the air. Far behind him, he heard Lucy's anguish howl. "Arr!" she cried. Edward landed with an almost alarming thump, and then he tumbled down a long, dirty hill. He finally stopped moving. He was on his back, staring up at the night sky. The world was silent. He couldn't hear Lucy anymore. He could not hear the train. Edward looked up at the stars, and he was started to say the names of the constellations. But then he stopped. "Bull," his heart said to him. "Lucy." How many times, Edward, would he have to leave without getting the chance to say goodbye to someone? A lone cricket started up a song, and Edward listened. Something deep inside him ached, and he wished he could cry.